Welcome to the Play-Based Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Kristen R.B. Peterson, and maybe your new teacher bestie that is here to hype you up, maybe give you a motivating kick in the pants, and teach you all I know about play and childhood. I am here to help you challenge old and outdated practices and inspire you to create a truly developmentally appropriate early childhood environment that fosters creativity, curiosity, and joy in the children that you care for. Let's set the stage for a lifelong love of learning. Let's get going. Welcome to the Play-Based Learning Podcast. Today I have the beautiful Rae Pica. She shakes her head every time I say that. I gotta build you up.
Thank you.
Then we gotta build women up, right?
Yes, we do. We
Yes.
do.
So welcome, Rae Pica. Thank you for being on the podcast. We're going to chat about your new book.
Thank you, Kristen. I'm always glad to talk with you about anything.
Amazing. Me too. It's always such a joy. Everywhere I go, I've probably told you this before, but you are on my list of must-read books for early childhood educators. So anytime I go into a room of people, your name comes up multiple times, as well as the names of my two favorite books, which are What If Everybody Understood Child
Child
Development?
development, yeah.
And What If We Taught the Way Children Learn?
Something like that. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, what if we taught the way children learn? Yes, that's it.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. They're
Yeah.
my faves, and they're on the shelf behind me as well. So
Aw,
yeah. So I appreciate you always and the work that you're doing. So
thank you.
today we're talking about kind of I feel like it's a little controversial among early childhood educators, which is the topic of rough and tumble play.
Mhm.
And I think that it is really misunderstood because in my experience going into on stages and speaking in front of people about early childhood education and play, when they hear rough and tumble, people think, whoa, we can't do that. We can't let children wrestle. We can't let children roughhouse with each other. We can't let them engage in risky play. They'll get hurt. And so I guess what I would love for you in your words to describe, like, how can we debunk that? Like, what's the
Feels like
best way to let people know that that's not the case and that it's so essential for growth and development?
Yeah, I spend so much time these days debunking myths, that
Yeah.
there are just so many of them floating around out
Right.
there. And there's so much fear
Yeah.
floating around that, the myths, they feed on each other,
They
right? The
do.
myths and the fear. So, um,
And the control of the adults in the room also doesn't help things at all either.
and it isn't just the teachers who are afraid of risky and rough and tumble play. I've got those in two separate chapters in the book, um, because I mean there is a lot of overlap, but
Yeah.
I would say risky, rough and tumble, and big body play are the three that children are not experiencing enough of, particularly the risky and the rough and tumble. But you know, if of course, if we're going to be banning tag, and there was one article I read where they banned balls of any kind and any size on the playground. So apparently even a playground ball is a danger to children. If we're going to be banning that, of course we're not going to allow something like
Yeah.
risky or rough and tumble play. Of course they're going to get hurt. I tell a story in the book about the little boy who was my neighbor for a number of years when I lived in New Hampshire, and he was 6 when I moved in. And Clark, he had bloodied body parts and broken bones, and he was a typical boy living a typical childhood. And it wasn't that his parents went, "Oh yeah, okay, so what? He's got a broken bone." I mean, they took him for medical attention, but nobody freaked out because it was what boys did, what
Yeah.
children did. They fell down and went boom. They scraped
Yeah.
themselves, got bruised and bloodied and all of that. And it's just part of growing up. Now, that's not a very good argument for allowing children,
It's good enough for me.
perhaps. Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of the word typical, but typical childhood is what we would like, for
Yeah.
children, the kind of typical childhood that I grew up seeing. Um, but yeah, they I don't
So,
know, how do we convince them? I mean, we
yeah.
convince them by pointing out the number of ways that rough and tumble play, is good for
Yeah.
them. Um, it helps them explore their personal boundaries, and become aware of what touch is playful and what touch is
Mhm.
painful, and then they learn how to control their strength and better interact with one another. And I didn't realize until I was researching for the book that even wasps and spiders engage in rough and tumble play.
No,
Yeah.
really?
I mean, we know about puppies and kittens and pandas, right?
Yeah.
We've all seen that, but
Yeah.
yeah, wasps and spiders, it is really prevalent in nature. It is something, again, just like play in general, is what nature intended. And we just keep stepping in the way of Mother Nature and saying, no, no, we know better, which is
Right.
kind of crazy, isn't it? Um, but yeah, boys in particular, although Mike Huber in his book, which I can't remember the name of it right now, um, wrote that it's the girls in his class who most often ask him to bring out the rough and tumble mat, which is, I think,
I
pretty
love
cool.
that.
It's
I love
pretty
that.
cool. But boys typically lack the type of interaction, that rough and tumble play allows for them. Um, the touch. Touch is so incredibly important. Francis Carlson wrote a wonderful book about the need for touch in children.
Mm.
And boys don't get enough of it, you
Mm.
know. Um, Sometimes it's not the right kind of touch that
Right.
they get. And they also, it teaches them how to regulate feelings of aggression. Now, you might think, well, my child doesn't have feelings of aggression, but every child has feelings of aggression.
Yeah, they
It
do.
develops naturally in children, right? At the extreme, Dr. Stuart Brown, who's founder of the National Institute for Play, he
Mhm.
discovered in his interviews with 26 prison inmates that the most aggressive among them, the ones who had committed the most egregious crimes, had never engaged in rough and tumble play as children.
Really?
Yeah, now that's not to say that every child who doesn't engage with it is going to grow up to be a murderer.
Right.
Um, but it's something that they need.
Yeah.
And, there's the possibility that they could get hurt, but there are ways to tell when a
Yes.
child, right? You've seen it, right?
Oh yeah. I call it play face.
Ah,
Yeah. Like you can tell. So at Butterfly Hill, the program that I founded, we had wrestling mats and we would bring them out and let children wrestle. And we just knew as the adults in the room to look for like the signs of play, like happiness, joy on their faces. And if we saw something switch, we could then step in. However, that never happened in
ah,
my time at Butterfly Hill, being the teacher in the classroom. It never happened where all of a sudden somebody switched and was like aggressive during their roughhousing, their wrestling.
yeah.
It was joy on their faces. They were laughing, they were smiling. And then if like one accidentally, like if somebody was like, oh, and something hurt, it was really cool because you could see their empathy starting to build, like their
Oh,
compassion for others. And they would stop right away and they'd be worried for the other child. And like oftentimes children get worried that they're going to get in trouble, but over time with their trusted teachers at Butterfly Hill, they knew that they were going to get in trouble for accidentally hurting somebody, but we have to like walk through the steps after that of like checking in with them and making sure, they're okay. And so like that's what we did at Butterfly Hill and it was never an issue. There was no punching, no kicking. But the kids also set up like the guidelines, the boundaries
Yes.
ahead of time. We had a discussion with all of them, like, this is wrestling, and the goal is really to just like get one of you on the ground. Like, that's really it. um, so like, and then they would come up with, well, no spitting, no hair pulling, no um kicking, things like that. And
No biting.
it was
Right,
fine.
right. And I think it's brilliant that you said the kids came up with these rules. I mean, when they take part in the rulemaking, they're
Yeah.
much more likely to want to abide by them. And because they understand the need for them when they've created them themselves, they
Yeah.
take that ownership of the rules and protocols. Yeah, we will not bite, we will not grab above the shoulders, we will not hit others with objects. And we
Yep.
will stop as soon as someone isn't having fun. You know,
Yes.
yeah, those are the four that I outlined. And
I
and
like those.
and but as you said, observation is the simplest and most effective way to ensure that it's safe and fun. If a
Yeah.
child is smiling, it's probably okay, you know.
Yes.
If a child is crying or frowning or, then, you may have to intervene. And sometimes that doesn't have to be a complete stoppage. Sometimes it can
Yeah.
just be a reminder to be gentle with one another.
Yep.
Oh, and you mentioned empathy. My gosh, isn't that one of the most important traits a person can have?
Yeah.
The ability to put themselves in someone
Yes.
else's shoes. We sure could use some of that,
Yes.
more of that.
Absolutely. Well, and empathy, from what I've learned, empathy, it's really not fully developed until, well, I think it starts getting more developed around the age of 7 or 8. So, like, true empathy, I mean, you're practicing it when you're younger.
Hmm.
And rough housing is a great way to practice it.
Yeah, it is. It
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Mm. What are so like, if children, we know they're not going to grow up to be murderers if they don't have, mostly. I mean, there might be like one or two that grow up to be murderers, but um, what what are the downfalls of like completely taking all like rough housing, big body play, risky play? Like, what is the detriment? What are we doing to our kids when we take those things away?
Well, we're not giving them all those opportunities I was mentioning, but in addition to those, like with risky play, we are running the risk that they will not be able to assess risk. That's kind of a redundant sentence there, but
Yeah.
um, it's so important that they they understand that some risks are you're willing to take and some you aren't. And they learn that by determining for themselves whether or not they should climb that next rung, whether or not they can make it safely over the big puddle or, whatever it
Mhm.
might be. They have to judge those things. And they kind of have a built-in sense of judgment for them. They're meant to try things out and see what they can and they can't do. Now some people might say, so what's the big deal? They don't learn to assess risks. Well, gee, there are a few of those in life as you get older. When you're
Mhm.
an adolescent, you know, what's the risk? Oh, what's the harm of trying this cigarette or this
Mm.
beer?
Yeah.
I mean, they say that even, it there's fewer incidences of pregnancy with kids who understand risk assessment.
Oh, interesting. That
Yeah,
makes
and
sense.
yeah, I mean they have that sense of self and self-control.
Yeah.
And then the big body play. Oh, I mean, I don't even know where to start.
Okay, well, let's start with, what are some examples of big body play?
Oh, well, you use the large muscles of the body. Um, Running, jumping, climbing, all of those wonderful locomotor skills. They're leading such sedentary lives these days that they're not getting to practice all of those things. So, yeah, hanging, swinging, spinning, all of that comes under the
Yes.
heading of big body play. I'm actually creating a new online course about big body play. So
Ooh.
it's funny because that's where I mean, I started as a movement
Yeah,
person,
you did.
and it was all about the physical back in the day. And then I came to realize the importance of movement as a tool for learning, active learning and all of that. Um, and just all of these other aspects to it have kind of taken over. And now I'm going back to my roots and creating this new online course. So, uh,
Amazing.
yeah, yeah. And as I'm reviewing all of this, I'm thinking, wow, wow. Kids are just not, they're leading such sedentary lives, and they're not
Yes.
getting all of this anymore. And okay, so yesterday when I was working on the course, I was writing about, how they require the big body play to build and maintain healthy bones, muscles, and joints. Those things don't just happen.
Mm,
I mean, they don't grow healthy bones, muscles, and joints by sitting in front of screens or,
so true.
um, and I often, there, and we've said the term childhood obesity crisis so often that it's become kind of, it goes in one ear and out the
Yeah.
other at this point, and but it's getting worse, not better, and the list of ailments that come from that, um, there's just, I mean, even in terms of fine motor skills.
Mm,
The large muscles develop before the small muscles do.
yes.
So,
Yes.
we stick a pencil in the child's hand at 4 years old and think that that's going to work when, first of all, the hand isn't fully developed.
No.
And secondly, they haven't been climbing and swinging and hanging and all of that stuff I mean, the shoulders, the upper torso, all of that is involved in writing. I think my brain is just getting all scattered here. I get all crazy about all of this
Yes.
stuff.
Well, rightfully
Um,
so. We care about the children in this world and we care that they have the opportunities to develop and grow the way they're meant
they went
to.
the way they're meant to. And that's what I
Mhm.
was going to say. It's like we are emphasizing imagined fears
Yes.
to the point that we are keeping them from doing, things that nature intended for them, and thereby ignoring the very real fears that they might not develop physically, that they might, become a victim to type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
I mean, back in the day, the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, said that children born in the year 2000 faced a 1 in 3 chance of developing type 2 diabetes. Yeah, I mean that
Wow.
those are not good odds, and then
No.
we know all the repercussions, possible repercussions of diabetes. I've witnessed it in people, um, the illnesses and death that can result from that. So there are some things that, and you know,
We're gonna have like a whole bunch of obese murderers on our hands, right?
There are some very real
That's
things
why
we
we
should be
care.
afraid of,
Yeah.
that we're not. And instead, we're making up stuff about stranger danger and the possibility of, they banned cartwheels at the school, not because there had been any incidents of injuries with cartwheels, but because
Right.
there might be, there might
Right.
be. So, yeah, we've gotten a little cuckoo.
We have. Well, even at my son's school, he came, we live in Minnesota and it snows here. It's snowing right now. And
That
so
it
snow
does.
accumulates and it's fun to play with when you're a kid. Like you should be allowed to play with the snow. But he said that they couldn't pick up snow. They couldn't pick it up off the playground.
Are they afraid that they'll make snowballs
Yeah,
and throw them?
throw them. Yep. I saw this one drives me bonkers too. So at my daughter's middle school, they don't go outside hardly ever. They sixth, seventh, eighth grade. And I mean, we know that you still need to move when you're 6th, 7th, 8th grade, right?
You also need
It
natural light for the
is.
pineal gland and for more productivity. And I mean, there's so much research and
Yes.
there's research about, the role of physical activity and learning and in the brain and all of that, but also about the need for breaks. You know,
Yes.
the learning brain can only absorb like 10 minutes of stuff at a time.
Yeah.
So, oh boy.
I know. Okay,
Okay.
I'll finish the story about my
Yes,
daughter.
do. Sorry.
So she was outside, the children who are getting picked up by their parents wait outside in the back of the school, and then we drive around and wait in a really long line to pick
Oh
them
yeah,
up.
I've seen those lines.
And so then there's all the kids out there, and there's maybe like two adults kind of monitoring, trying to keep kids all wrangled in one spot. And there was ice chunks like on the sidewalk, and there was a kid kicking him around, just kicking it with his foot. Like they were playing like a little made up game of soccer between these couple boys in this
As
ice
children
chunk.
do.
And
Sure.
some teacher just, no, don't, you don't need to kick the ice chunk. Like shut it down. And I was like, why?
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
You're
I
in
mean,
control.
all these crazy examples come into my mind. They just pop into my mind when you're telling me things like that. The story I heard about the woman who called the police because children were sledding down a hill, speaking of snow,
Oh,
you know,
just
um,
upsetting.
iconic childhood activity, and she's
Yes.
calling the police.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
Then I used to live, when I lived in New Hampshire, there was a house I lived in with a big steep hill that went down the backyard. And next door was the same steep hill. And I was out on my deck one day and they had rented that place out, the place next door to me. And the children were running up the hill. Now, mind you, I could barely walk up the hill without. And the fact that children could run up that hill is a miracle and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And of course, what did the mother yell? Don't run.
Yeah.
Don't run. It was grass.
Oh my gosh.
They
And you're
were
going up the hill.
going up the hill, running, maybe even if they ran down the hill, and fell and rolled, that's really good for proprioceptive and vestibular senses, rolling,
Yes,
you
it
know.
is.
It wasn't like they were running on broken glass. It was, yeah. Um,
I like to say that the like the last greatest risk in life that we allow children to take, like when they're a baby and they're learning how to walk, like we cheer them on. We stand there and we're like, come on, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. And they fall down and we're like, get back up and do it again. And like we celebrate it. And then as soon as they start to run, we're like, no, stop, slow
yeah,
down, you're gonna
yeah,
fall.
exactly,
And so, like,
exactly.
learning to walk is really the last big risk that we let children take.
Ooh, that's really sad.
If you think
Think
about
about
it, it really
how many
is.
years after that they have to learn. And, you know, the two words that should not be uttered as often as they are be careful.
Mm,
That's what children hear all the time. Be careful, be careful, be careful. Of course, we want them to be careful,
yeah,
but they will learn to be careful if we allow them to engage in childhood play the way they're supposed to. And,
absolutely.
girls hear it far more often than boys, of course.
Yeah,
Um, there was one study where the children were climbing and, the boys were encouraged. Of course, mom and dad were right there to catch them if they fell, but
yeah,
were encouraged, you can do it. You can go a little higher. And the girls were told, be careful, be careful, be careful, which, doesn't lend itself to growing up courageous.
yeah. It
Yeah.
doesn't.
Yeah.
So at Butterfly Hill, you'll love this story because we're going to bring it back around and throw some positive stories in here. So
Okay.
at Butterfly Hill, the kids go out to forest school, excuse me. The kids go out to forest school in the mornings and they spend 2.5 hours out in the woods, just
Nice.
romping around, climbing trees, all the things. So I just came across this video from back when I was leading forest school and teaching forest school of these three little girls. They have their full mud suits on, like rain suits, because it was kind of damp out. And we're in what we called the mushroom forest, but I don't know why we got that name. There's no mushrooms, but it's
Okay.
like red and white pine trees. So there's not a lot of underbrush because of all the pine needles that fall down. And the trees, the branches start, like the big branches start 15 feet up in the air. But below that, there's all these like little nubs from branches that used to be there. And so I have this little video of three little girls working together. Two of them are trying to teach, so two of them were like 4 or 5 years old and one was 3 years old, and they were trying to teach the 3-year-old how to climb the tree, and they were like cheering her on. They're like, you can do it, you can do it, I know you can do it, just put your hand on this one and then put your other hand here and then put your foot
Oh,
right here. And they were like helping her feet put like on the little branch nubs, and they were like clapping for her and cheering for her. And it was like, it just was the best. I have so
oh,
many little videos like of children cheering other children on, taking risks
I
and
love
doing
that.
hard things that they didn't think that they could do. And I think that that's what's so special about taking risks is that, and big body play and rough and tumble play is that you do things that you might not be comfortable doing, but then
Mm.
you like grow so much self-confidence because of it.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. I tell the story in the book of when I was a child. We lived in this house, it was stucco, and there was the big concrete or cement or whatever they
Yeah.
were, steps leading up to the door. Um, and there was this concrete platform, sort of, I don't know, whatever. And you could jump down into what was this very small concrete space.
Okay.
I'm quite sure that that's perhaps why my knees don't like me anymore.
Oh
But
my gosh.
I would climb the stairs, climb up onto that ledge thing, and I couldn't think about it for too long, and then just jump.
Yeah.
And it was a long way down.
Oh my
And, you
gosh.
know, you were surrounded by concrete or cement or stucco or bricks or whatever the heck was there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but, I did it. I did it.
Yes.
I also learned to cartwheel down the middle of the street, and I had to practice and practice and practice and practice before I finally got it. And I mean, just between the persistence and the bravery that I had as
Yeah.
a child, when you're an adult, you can look back at those things and remember that person's still inside of you,
Yes.
still there. You can still persist, you can still take
Yeah.
chances, and it will be okay. I mean, we all need that feeling.
Yeah. When
Yeah.
is that? What's the, as an adult now, like what is the last like risk that you took that you afterwards you were like, oh my gosh, I did that?
Oh, well, on May 2nd, it'll be 15 years since I moved from New Hampshire.
Okay.
I lived on this beautiful little lake in this adorable little house, but I needed more social and cultural experience, and it was a very isolated little house. And so I took my two cats, packed us all up, and we moved to Northern Virginia, just outside DC. And honest to God, Kristen, I still can't believe I did it. My family doesn't move. We don't go anywhere.
Yeah, mine doesn't either, but I'm gonna someday.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, and here I am down here, and I still can't believe I did it.
Good
But I
job.
did because it was what I needed to do. And you know what? It was
Yeah.
the best decision I ever made.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Oh,
I'm just so proud of myself. I mean,
I
I,
love
I
that.
know I know women who've been in China in the Peace Corps and all this sort of thing, and that's a heck of a lot bigger deal than moving a few states south. But I don't care. That was like my Mount Everest.
Yes. Oh my goodness. That's so
Yeah.
good. That
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
scary. That's a
And
big,
then,
huge, huge thing.
I mean, think about it. You take a risk anytime you apply for a job.
Yeah.
You take a risk every time you're in a social situation and you decide to talk to someone you don't know. Children take a risk when they try to make a new friend. I mean, there
Yeah.
are just so many ways in which if you haven't ever taken them, you're going to stay in a job you hate because you're afraid to leave.
Yeah.
You're not going to move to that new city. Uh, Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. We
Oh,
we
it's so
need to be
essential.
less risk aversive.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
I think as a child growing up, I took a lot of risks. I mean, because I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and it was like, it was okay to play outside your house and not have your parents know where you are at
Oh,
all.
never. They never knew.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
rode a bike. So like I would ride my bike around the neighborhood all day. There was one time where I was riding the a bike in my best friend's driveway. I was like a fifth grader, maybe fourth grade, I don't know. I fell. I broke my wrist,
Oh.
but didn't want to go home because I would have to go to the hospital. And so I just played all day. I rode my bike all day with a broken wrist. And
Wow.
I know. I just like and when I had to stop cuz like back in the 90s, early 90s, there was only like one hand brake on the bike and I had to reach over, I remember with my right hand to squeeze the brake going down the hill so I wouldn't
Oh,
crash.
wow. Yeah,
And
yeah.
then I got home and I was like, I think I broke my wrist. And my mom was like, when? And I was like, well, like 8 o'clock this morning. And she's like, you did not break your wrist. If it was 8 o'clock this morning. And then she ended up having to take me in a few hours later because she got home and it was like swollen.
Yeah,
And oh my gosh. And I had to have a
yeah.
cast and
I mean,
everything.
sometimes we do pay consequences
We
for the
do.
risks we take, but we learn from those always.
Yeah, we
Uh, I
do.
um, I was remembering as you were talking about that, I was remembering I was down the road, round the corner. My parents had no idea where I was, and I had climbed a tree. I didn't know that I was afraid to climb back down,
Oh, oh no.
which has taught me not to climb ladders in my,
Yeah.
later years. I couldn't get back down. I was just stuck up there and paralyzed. And oh, the grouchy neighbor from across the street came running over. What are you doing up in that tree? And she really laid into me. But um, now I have a funny story to think about.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my
I took a
goodness.
risk. It didn't pay off quite to the extent that I would have liked, but I did get up. It was a 50% success.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so if you could, so like if you had an early childhood educator who was like, okay, listen to this and said, okay, I know it's so essential now. What baby steps would you tell them to take to, let's just go with rough housing? Like, what are some baby steps that they can take to ensure that children have the opportunities to roughhouse in their programs?
Just bring out the mats and see what happens. Again, it's Mike Huber, I think, who says just take those baby steps and when nothing terrible happens, you'll be encouraged to go a little further with it. I mean,
Mm,
it's okay. It's going to be okay.
yeah.
Um, yeah. And he also um videotapes the children.
Mm,
So, in the book, in my book, Why Play, every chapter has partnering with parents, which was my wonderful
yeah.
editor's idea, because we so often have to, um, you know, convince parents of the need for things like this, right? And
Yeah.
so he um, videotapes them on the mat playing rough and tumble. And the parents end up really moved by the joy and
Mm,
excitement they see in their children. So whenever you can show parents or another teacher or a director or whatever it might be, how much the children benefit from these things, how much they enjoy them, then you've got, a lot on your side.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that that's so important in order to have buy-in from the parents, and I think that
Yes.
that's like at Butterfly Hill, one thing that I made sure is that parents in the parent handbook know that children take like we embrace risk at Butterfly Hill, and we
Yes.
embrace rough and tumble play, and we embrace big body play, and so they don't there's no surprises
Exactly.
when we do pull out the mats and send them videos of children wrestling.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah,
And these days, it might not be a handbook or a brochure, but it should be messaging on a website, on your website, if
yeah,
you own a private preschool or childcare center. So they know what your philosophy is,
mhm,
because you don't want them to walk in and see the children wrestling like a bunch of little kittens, all over a mat and have
yeah,
them say, why are they not learning to read?
right,
You know?
yeah,
Um, but then you can use that as an example of how they have to develop their large muscles before their small muscles and, the
yes,
reading and the writing and all of that. So,
absolutely. Oh my
yeah.
goodness. Okay, so your book is called Why Play: How to Make Play an Essential Part of Early Education.
Yeah.
Where can people get it at?
Well, the typical places, Amazon, but it's published by Teachers College Press. The price is the same, I think, so I would go to Teachers College Press. However, your listeners, if they go to Teachers College Press, will get a 20% discount between what, March and June?
March 1st and June 31st.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
just use the discount code PBL20.
Yes, all uppercase, PBL20, and I'll put it in the show notes as well with the link to Teachers College Press so that
And
you
that's
can
pretty
find
easy to
it.
remember. PBL,
Yes.
play-based learning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Ray, it's always a pleasure.
Same here.
And I'm sure I'll have you back because, there's probably another book in there somewhere.
I don't know. I think 23 is plenty, don't you?
Yeah, that's a lot. One was a lot for me. So I
Yeah,
don't know how you can do that many.
I love to write. And when Sarah, my editor, contacted me from Teachers College Press and asked me to do this, I thought, I don't think so. I think I'm done. But there's that little
Yeah,
writer in me that can't seem to say no.
I
Uh,
know.
yeah, yeah,
You've
I
just got
do.
so much knowledge and so much
Oh,
expertise
it's
and
just that I'm
passion
old,
that like
really old, and I've
we
got
need
a lot of experience at this point.
you need to maybe think about full retirement instead of semi-retirement.
That would be nice. My
Yeah.
ship's coming in, I can feel it.
Yeah. What are you gonna do to play when you retire fully?
Oh my goodness. Oh, well, one of the reasons I moved here, as I said, was for more social and cultural.
Yeah.
Now see, yeah, my friend and I, my friend next door, Paul and I, we go to the theater a lot.
Mhm.
Live theater. I love live theater.
Yeah. I do
Um,
too.
yeah, I've got a pond down the road that I will walk around and the ducks and the geese and the birds to look at and all of that. And I mean, I like some sedentary things like reading. I read
I
a lot
do
of
too.
novels and I crochet and but
Ooh.
yeah, there are lots
What's
of
your
things.
what's your favorite musical that you've ever seen?
Ah, we went to the Kennedy Center to see The Lion King.
I've never seen The Lion King.
Oh, it was astonishing.
I
And
bet.
these great big animals, they just make them. I mean, there are people under them.
Yeah.
The elephant, I was sitting on the aisle, and the elephant showed up right beside me. They come down the aisle, and I was like, oh
Oh
my
my
God.
gosh.
It was just wonderful.
Oh.
It was just
Oh.
incredible.
I'll have
Yeah.
to go I'll have to see that at some point. Is it still on Broadway in New York City? Do you know?
I don't know. I
I
have
don't
no
either.
idea. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah,
My
but that
favorite musical ever is Moulin Rouge.
we saw that at the Kennedy Center also.
So
We
good.
fell head over heels in love with with the head guy, the main guy. He was brilliant.
Oh, it was so good, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah. And we're
Mm.
going for what might be the last time in a couple of weeks. Oh,
Which
may-
one?
maybe this, we're gonna go see Riverdance.
Ooh,
Talk about joy.
yeah,
So much life and just we saw them last year. Just
yeah.
it made us so happy that we had to
Oh
go
my
back
gosh.
again.
And those river dancers would not be doing what they're doing now if they did not have rough and tumble and big body play when they were little.
No, that's the thing. You can't just um, decide at age 12 or something to start moving
Yeah,
and develop all those skills and muscles and joints healthy. It has to start in early childhood. We
absolutely.
have to remember how excited we are when they take that first step. And there's a
Yeah.
reason why we're excited. It's
Mhm.
because they're developing as they should. And that development doesn't stop after they take their first step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, thank you so much, Ray, for being here. I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
always, and just love spreading your knowledge out into the world because it needs to
Thank
be out
you.
there.
Thank you for being willing to do that.
Of
I
course.
appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. If you liked what you heard today, share this podcast with your coworkers, admin, or maybe even your partner. And I love getting 5-star reviews so more people can embrace play. Hit follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Or connect with me on Instagram or my website, KristenRBPeterson.com. Until next time.